Hello and welcome to Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the world. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Evan Garcia.
Good morning, everybody. How's it going?
And unfortunately, we couldn't have Abby in today. She had some other things she needed to take care of, but don't worry, she'll be in future episodes to come. I'd like to start off a little bit just by talking about how much support we got for our first episode, and I think it's pretty exciting just to see that many people behind us and just supportive of what we're doing here. So we really appreciate all your guys' support and all you guys reaching out to us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube, and just talking to us about how much you like the idea. We really appreciate you guys just supporting what we're doing here. So going into what today's episode is going to be about, we're going to be talking about our first real issue regarding agriculture and what we believe to be the biggest issue regarding facing agriculture today, and that's agricultural literacy, or rather a lack of. I think we'd kind of be most beneficial to start off by kind of defining agricultural literacy and explain to them what that means.
Yeah, because a lot of issues surrounding agricultural issues comes from the ag literacy aspect, because the way we think, purchase, and the way we market to consumers, the way we make policy, all comes from the education we have about agriculture. So this is definitely very important when thinking about any agricultural topic that's in the global arena right now.
Right. So National Agriculture in the Classroom defines agricultural literacy as a person possessing an understanding of the agricultural industry or a basic knowledge of the food and fiber system. A person possessing this kind of knowledge would be able to analyze, synthesize, and communicate this kind of information about agriculture to the public.
Yeah, definitely. And we have a lack of that in our society right now. More people than this statistic may have a general idea about agriculture. I know from where I live, we're surrounded by agriculture. A lot of kids are involved, so we have a good idea over here. But in our society, less than 2% of the population is actually directly related and working in production agriculture. So that's a very big deficit when it comes to the amount of people we need to understand this issue and to educate themselves, and for us to educate them on why agriculture is important for everyone in our world.
And kind of the interesting thing I found about it is even though we're in an agricultural thriving area where you can't walk 4 blocks without seeing a dairy or a cornfield or something, there's agriculture surrounding us. There's still people in our hometown that have no idea what agriculture is or what it does. I mean, just to give you an example, one day we went to go recruit some 8th graders for FFA, and we were talking to them, and there was an 8th grader that asked each of the 3 officers that were there recruiting if chocolate milk really comes from brown cows. Now, it's something we usually like to joke about, but it's a serious issue. People don't understand that there's a difference, and they don't understand where their food comes from and how it's made, and we think that's a pretty important issue here.
Mm-hmm. And that can come back on a larger scale if those kind of kids don't, like we said earlier, don't get educated. So it's really good that we do implement that within the FFA program here, that we go out to those 8th graders and recruit them in order to get into those basic knowledge-based agricultural classes in the high school. And I think that'll become easier next year. Our school is switching to a 4x4 system where the students will have the opportunity to choose 8 classes rather than 6, which we've currently had. So I think more kids will start to join into the agricultural program and realize that it is something very important to our society.
Right, I agree. And I think it's kind of important. Like, we wouldn't really be discussing these issues if we didn't have some kind of idea of how it can be fixed. So in terms of solution, I think the most important thing we can do, just from our perspectives, is just educating anybody that we can in our daily lives about agriculture. I think the most effective way to attack this problem is if we educate children at a younger age about agriculture and have them kind of learn about it as they're going through their various years of grade school.
And even just taking initiative, like any form of social media, social interaction, or connection and communication with people that you can do, like your great idea to even begin this podcast. This is initiation of a new source for people to be able to go to and listen to in order to get information and grasp the knowledge they need in order to be a more informed, educated public.
Yeah, definitely. The couple other ways I've kind of noticed that, the FFA organization itself is trying to improve ag literacy is we just passed the Discover FFA program, I guess you could call it, which allows 7th and 8th graders to join our organization and just get a little bit of a glance at what our organization is all about. And I think this is going to be really beneficial. There have been a lot of debates over whether or not this is a good idea. I think this is a really good idea for the fact that it allows kids to get a first-hand experience about the organization that helps educate kids about agriculture. A lot of people are saying that it would cause problems in terms of competition and in terms of getting these kids burnt out before they even reach high school, which I think there's a possibility of that, but it all depends on their teachers and how heavily they influence this new information on them.
Yeah, that could also be very few, because I know personally competing with competitions, 4 years almost seems to go by so fast. So to have that extra, if I had that extra 2 years, I would have been able to even learn even more than I know now, and it would be such a great opportunity for these kids to just jump in and get involved at that age already.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. Same thing, I've done competitions for 3 or 4 years, and it feels like you just don't have enough. If I had just 1 extra year, I could have done better. And you just keep telling yourself that. Well, these kids are getting 2 extra years. So it'd be interesting to see where they go with this new information and this new form of practicing that they're going to get. Just to move on a little bit from the Discovery FFA program, some of the other kind of ways that we've been trying to push agricultural literacy is, the podcast itself, but especially just promoting ourselves through social media. We found that to be extremely effective. Instagram is probably one of the most effective ways I can think of for this, just because Facebook and Twitter, you can post as many long textual posts as you want, but people are going to have to read all that, and you can't promise that they're going to retain all that information. Instagram requires you to post a picture with any post that you want to make. It gives them a visual, and it makes them interpret it from they have to see what you're doing. And I think that's a little bit more beneficial in terms of just getting them a decent understanding of what is actually going on in this industry.
Yeah, I definitely like that, because a lot of the time you can have communication by word of mouth, but I think that social media has really been taking over the past decade and a half or so, and that being implemented to reach people globally in an instant is going to be extremely important as we continue to educate more people to be agriculturally literate in the future. So I think we definitely need to utilize media, social media, and everything that people are using nowadays in order to have easier access to knowledge.
Which I think we talked a lot about how we could fix the problem. We went over it a little bit, but I think it'd be kind of beneficial if we kind of just told them really what the problem is. And what I mean by that is, we know that there's a large lack of agricultural literacy. A survey conducted by the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance said that 72% of consumers have no idea what farming or ranching is all about. They don't know where their food comes from. They don't know how these agricultural processes occur, and they really don't know all the steps it takes to get from farm to plate. And the repercussions that come from this lack of knowledge are pretty substantial. They hurt farmers in a lot of different ways. I think it's important that we kind of go over some of those as well.
And a lot of people will say in their right minds, and rightfully so, that it is difficult to learn this knowledge when they are in other careers or other field goals, and they have families and they have other things they have to do. So just going out there and picking what they're going to eat is a minimal obligation they have within knowing the actual industry, because the food is there and it's ready for them, and I totally understand that. However, the agricultural industry affects every single person. Every single person eats every day. We cannot live our lives without food, and the food and fiber system in agriculture is what provides that. So I think it is very important to understand that, because our food supply could run out potentially if we don't utilize the new technologies we have, if people don't understand why we farm the way we farm and how important it is for every single person on the face of the earth.
That's right. And kind of to add on to that, back in the day, it was agri-literacy was a lot more common, because before, I couldn't give you an exact year, but just a few decades ago, it was to the point where people were so close to a farm, like they had families and they were farming, they had neighbors that were farming, they were so close to agriculture that it wasn't uncommon for people to know where their food came from, because just go back a few decades and you could see that a lot of people own their own animals. Even if they didn't have a full operational farm, they had a few chickens in the backyard. They had a few cows. They had a few pigs. They had their own animals, and they harvested their own food, so they knew where their food came from. And we've kind of gotten away from that a little bit. It's really kind of a weird thing to think about in such a short time, how far families today are from agriculture. Like they're 2-3 generations away from this industry, and you think it'd be pretty important for them to stay connected to this industry, considering it feeds them and it keeps them alive and it keeps them healthy and happy. I think that one of the one of the most important things that we can address in terms of that issue is that if people don't know where their food comes from, just out of a lack of knowledge or out of lack of trying to learn, they start voting on things that cause problems for farmers, such as Proposition 2, and they start doing all
Brendan,
kinds.
can you explain Proposition 2 a little bit for our listeners?
Absolutely. So Proposition 2 is a piece of legislature that was passed actually not too long ago, a few years ago. And what it does is it requires certain types of animals, egg-laying hens, I think swine as well, and veal calves, to be contained in certain types of cages or pens that had a certain regulation on how large they had to be. And the reason this was passed is because you see big trucks driving down the road with chickens in small cages on the backs of them, and people see this and they think, oh no, those chickens are hurting, or they can't stand up, they can't stretch, they can't move, and they feel bad for them. And these calves, they can't stand up all the way in their pens, or they can't stretch their legs, or they can't turn around, and this is something that people see, and because they don't understand.
Well, personally, Brendan, when I'm driving in a car, I can't stand up and stretch my legs either, so that kind of gives me a little bit of restraint, if you ask me. But
no, I completely agree with you there. But people see this and they don't understand. They don't know. Like they see it and they're just like, well, I feel so bad. I don't want that pig to suffer. I want that calf to suffer. And we get that. We don't want our animals to suffer either.
And there are some instances that you may see, very few, but those are the ones that really get blown up, is when we do have animal cruelty in the industry. And there is some, we have to admit that. But those few are the only ones that people really see, So
Right.
Every farmer, especially in our area and around, I know that they want to take good care of their animals. They want them to be prosperous, so that way they can produce the best they can for the consumers.
Right. And I think another aspect of it, which this is kind of a strange way of looking at it, but animals cannot produce a good amount of quality product if they're under a lot of stress. So it's very important for farmers not to stress out their animals, because if they do, they're not going to be producing as much, and those farmers are going to be losing out on a lot of profitable opportunity. So it's really important that the farmers take really, really good care of their animals. They have nutritionists come in, they have inspectors come in and make sure all their pens are proper environments for these animals to live in. So it's very important that people understand that farmers go through way more amounts of just regulating and checking that people give them credit for, and just this is all to make sure that their animals are healthy and happy and safe. And yeah, it has a certain number of importance to their productivity and the amount of money they can make off of them, but really it's just about these animals give us a lot of benefit. They give us food, they give us byproducts, they give us milk, they give us a lot of beneficial things that we need for our lives. The least we can do is give them a good life in return.
And I think we definitely do that within our industry. Granted, those few things you do see that get blown up by organizations such as
Right.
PETA and stuff like that.
Right. Obviously, there are a lot of activist groups and various individuals within the community. They'll blow up various situations in agriculture, some of which really are bad, and we're not going to hide the fact that there are people out there that abuse their animals, neglect their animals, and we by no means associate with those people. We don't think that they're right in doing so, but they do exist, and that's in every group, not just in agriculture. Any kind of industry, any kind of organization group, there's going to be corrupt people out there doing things that aren't right, or that the other people in the industry can't agree on.
And I think it is very important, like we are doing now, to address those issues, because if we just hide those, that is also ill education on our part.
Right.
You have to see everything that is going on, take into account to understand why we believe the way we do and why it is so important to keep on farming and producing agricultural products the way that they should be produced.
Right, absolutely. It's kind of interesting. You have the old-fashioned farmers, the farmers that are getting closer to 50 and 60 years old, which is actually the average age of the American farmer right now.
Yep.
And a lot of these old-fashioned farmers are pretty traditional in their ways of farming, where they don't want to tell anyone how they farm, because that's my method of farming. I don't want you to steal my ideas, or whatever their mentality is. And I completely get where they're coming from. But it's because of things like this, people hiding their methods of farming, and these farmers just sweeping under the rug everything that they do out of whether it's fear of people not agreeing with them or whether it's fear of people stealing their ideas, they're hiding all these methods, and that's causing a lot of suspicion because, you know, if any kind of industry won't tell you how they're operating, you're going to be a little suspicious of how they're actually doing it.
Yeah, most definitely.
So I think it's important for these farmers to, you know, to come out a little bit and say, hey, what I'm doing is not wrong. Let me show you what I'm doing, and maybe we can come to an agreement as to why it's important.
So moving on to kind of our personal experiences and how this is going to affect us in the future, I think that it is very good that a lot of kids are in this agricultural program such as FFA and take agricultural classes in order to educate themselves. But I think personally we've seen this problem as to where the age group is now. I think the investment we have right now will definitely benefit us in the future when we are working adults in the industry. But as of right now, I do have an example. Yesterday at the state FFA speaking finals, I listened to a prepared speech where a girl explained that she very calmly, very politely informed a lady about why choosing her antibiotic-free food was really no difference than the other food produced.
Right.
But the lady, being rightfully so in her appallment to this girl that is far younger than her, doesn't believe. I mean, if I were listening to an 8-year-old tell me how to eat my food or what to choose, I would also be like, I don't
skeptical,
know.
yeah.
What are you talking about? You don't know anything.
Right.
So I think our age right now is definitely going to play a factor. However, when we do get older in those policy issues and the industry issues, it'll benefit us in the long run once we start to be able to get our voices heard and have more credibility with that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that what we do in FFA here is really beneficial. Like I think how you're talking yesterday at the speech finals, I heard a couple of speeches myself about ag literacy and how these kids are engaging in their communities with people that they see in the grocery store, people they see, you know, walking down the street. And I think what this organization is doing is great, but we need to take a little bit more of an initiative in terms of educating our public more directly. And I think through this podcast is one of the most effective ways to do so. I was talking to a judge yesterday actually about the podcast, and they seemed pretty interested in the idea, and they said that they think that'd be a more effective way of delivering the message about agriculture in general, just ag issues, and how we can just kind of tell people a little bit about you know, what we do, why we do it, where the food comes from, that kind of thing. I think just kind of circle back around to some of the other examples of this issue with just perception of agriculture in general. Like I was saying earlier with the whole animal rights issue, people see, you know, chickens in crates driving down the road, and they see these calves stuck in these tiny hutches, and they see, you know, what they believe to be cruel to these animals, just because they don't really understand what's going on. And this lack of agricultural literacy, this perception of agriculture being some evil corporation, you know, factory farm deal, is just, it's causing a lot of issues for agriculture in terms of the legislature it passed, but in terms of just, like, for example, labeling. Labeling is, for those of you who don't know, labeling is just generally defined as just, you know, you have labels on certain types of food, and they say certain things. They could say non-GMO or no
organic,
hormones, or organic, or antibiotic free, and these labels, they cause a lot of issues for farmers. And
that's due to the fact that these labels they're definitely true most of the time. However, all of them except for the organic seal, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. But most of these labels are voluntary labels.
Right.
So there's not really a need to put the labels on. It's just a want in order to create a market that perceives healthier, safer food when in fact it is not really. Because take GMOs, for example. We have had GMOs for 24 years now, I believe. The first one was patented in 1994, and that was a Flavor Saver tomato.
Right.
And since then, with all the technology and all the research we have, there has not been one study that has been conducted that proves any harmful effects to the human body. So really, these genetically modified foods are no different than their organic counterparts, except for the fact that they do stay on the shelves longer in those facts, and they're cheaper for our consumers to buy. So really, they're getting a better deal with that instead of paying more for a label that says organic or GMO free. That's really all they're paying for is that label.
I agree. And the issues regarding labeling and regarding genetically modified organisms and all these different things we talked about today, including animal rights, Proposition 2, all those things, we will be addressing in more detail in later episodes. So just, don't think this is all we're going to say about GMOs for the rest of the podcast, because we definitely will go over them quite a few times. We're going to be going over genetic modification as a whole, and then labeling, the issues with labeling, and just like the various types of genetic modification and that kind of thing in future episodes. But just to kind of give you a glimpse about what the issue regarding agricultural literacy is, why this is so important, and really what we're limited to because of this lack of it is kind of what we're trying to address here. I think just to wrap up here in terms of the message we're trying to get across is, farmers feed the world. Nobody can dispute that. Farmers are the sole feeders of this world's population.
And everybody in the world population eats food every single day.
That's right. So we have to trust that our farmers are doing things right, that they're trying to do what's best for all of their consumers, and doing so,
and support them in doing that in order to feed our population.
Right. And in doing so, they do things that people may not understand, but just because you do not understand what they do does not automatically mean that what they're doing is wrong or evil or harmful to the consumers, because they're trying to make sure their consumers are happy, so that way the farmers benefit, the consumers benefit, and everybody in the world benefits. So just in terms of agricultural literacy, I think it's kind of important that people understand that farmers are not the bad guys here. Farmers are the ones trying to help them. We're trying to feed the world, and unless we fix this issue of our 72% of the population not knowing where the food comes from,
it's going to be more difficult for farmers to do their job in that aspect and in order to feed our growing population.
Absolutely.
So we want to thank you guys for tuning in today. I hope that you continue to listen, continue to even research and reach out to us in whatever means, any questions you have, anything you want us to talk about, or even if you might want to pop up on the show one time. We have lots of great ideas for you guys, and would love to hear back from you as well.
I absolutely agree. And in the future, we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about episodes regarding labeling and GMOs and that kind of thing. We haven't 100% for sure decided what our next episode is going to be on, so just you'll have to tune in next Wednesday and find out for sure. We'll be on a bit of a cliffhanger there. We are trying to get the podcast up on iTunes as well. We're currently struggling with that aspect of it. If any of you know how to do it, maybe reach out to us, because we have no idea. We've been working on it, trying to get that up there. But for right now, it's going to stay on YouTube. I might try to get it on some other podcast apps, but we're going to work on that, and we'll update you guys on social media. By the way, go follow us on the social media on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Talk Ag to Me.
That's right. And just one more thing. This episode, just break the fourth wall a little bit for you guys. This episode is going to be coming out on April 25th, my birthday, by the way. And
well, happy birthday if they're listening to it today.
Thank you guys. This episode is going to be coming out on April 25th. That'll be the day that we come back from our state FFA convention. And if any of you guys are listening that went to the state FFA convention, and maybe you met us, maybe you didn't, be sure you reach out to us with your stories, because this year is a bit of a unique year. This is the first time it'll be in a different location.
Yeah, this year it is moving to Anaheim, California instead of Fresno. So that'll be a large change, but I think it'll be interesting and nice to see what they're going to do with it over there.
I think so too. So yeah, if you guys have any stories, if you have any experiences, comments, you want to say, what you liked, what you disliked about the new convention location and how the convention was run, be sure to reach out to us, and we'll make sure your story gets up here. And even if you want to say it yourself, maybe we can bring you on the show and have you talk about it a little bit. So
definitely.
Yeah, make sure you guys reach out to us about that. And I think that's about it for this episode. You have anything else you want to say, Evan?
No, just thank you for tuning in and keep listening.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's about it. We'll see you guys next Wednesday. And don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer.
I'm hungry.